Shalom and good evening. I am Jonathan Hessen, and this is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. U.S. President Donald Trump threatens Hamas with its elimination, pledging to grant Israel with all tools necessary to finish the job. The 5 European members of the UN Security Council urge Israel to once again flood the Gaza Strip with humanitarian aid. Israel and the United States conduct a joint aerial drill over the Mediterranean Sea, including B-52 strategic bombers, in a clear signal to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Time is running out for Hamas to release the 59 remaining hostages from captivity, or else the IDF will receive an order to launch a full-scale, high-intensity offensive against the Palestinian terror group in the Gaza Strip. Last night, U.S. President Donald Trump met with a group of 8 Israeli survivors of Hamas captivity at the White House, during the course of which the released hostages thanked President Trump for his unceasing efforts and urged him to persevere in hopes that all of the remaining hostages will be returned to Israel.
Were you all taken on October 6th?
Yes.
So this was hell, huh?
It was the worst thing that anybody can go through. One of the days they handcuffed one of the boys that was with us, and when he came, and he brought a cutter and he cut his hand and smiled. They used to eat in front of us while they starved us.
It's a miracle.
That you're living.
Yes.
I was kidnapped on 7 October. My wife and my 2 daughters been murdered on the same day. I was held in captivity 491 days. I've been suffered there from starvation, violence and humiliations daily. One time they broken my ribs and it was so hurt that I couldn't breathe for 1 month. Thanks to President Trump, I'm a free man. I can hug my mother again. I can hug my brothers and sisters.
Following their meeting at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump released a statement on his Truth Social account in which he leveled a clear threat to the Islamist Hamas, which read, "Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you." President Trump went on to underscore, "I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say." In an interview to Fox News channel Hannity, Secretary of State Marco Rubio responded to a question on the president's unequivocal threat.
Well, hopefully that they're going to do exactly what he just said. You know how long we've been waiting for a long time in this country to have the kind of leadership with that kind of clarity. People don't realize the president meets with these people. He hears their stories. He's outraged, and rightfully so. He's tired of watching these videos every weekend where hostages that are emaciated are released and bodies are turned over, and sometimes it's the wrong bodies, and this 5 here and 3 there, and there's games that are being played, and he's lost his patience with it. He's been very clear about this from the beginning. He's created space and time for this to be solved, and now it's time for seeing it come to an end.
It is important to point out that in recent weeks, the United States has been negotiating with the Islamist Hamas terror group directly.
If the U.S. has a long-standing policy that we do not negotiate with terrorists, then why is the U.S. now negotiating directly and for the first time ever with Hamas?
Well, when it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Is it just about the hostages? Or are they also talking about the president's plan to take over Gaza?
These are ongoing talks and discussions. I am not going to detail them here. There are American lives at stake. I would defer you to the Department of State for further details, but I'm not going to get into those talks here at this podium.
Following the revelation of U.S. Hamas discussions, the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem announced that Israel has expressed to the United States its position regarding direct talks with Hamas, yet chose not to disclose its stance to the public. Separately, TV7 has learned that the direct negotiations between Washington and Hamas have been taking place in Qatar for the past 2 weeks, and while the United States informed Israel of the general topics discussed, the Trump administration stopped short from sharing all of the details with their Israeli counterparts. Meanwhile, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, the 5 European members of the Security Council, including Britain, France, Slovenia, Denmark, and Greece, made a joint public statement in which they called on Israel to resume the flow of humanitarian aid into the Hamas-plagued Gaza Strip. They urged all parties to accept an extension of Phase 1 of the ceasefire, failing to acknowledge that while Israel has already accepted the American outline for an extension, Hamas continues to refuse to talk unless Israel commits to the immediate termination of the war. The 5 European members of the Security Council further called upon Hamas to immediately release all of the hostages and condemned the Palestinian terror group for its cruel treatment of the captives, including French, American, and other Western dual nationals.
We express our condemnation of Hamas' ongoing retention and cruel treatment of the hostages, and we reiterate a call for their release. We need a permanent ceasefire that can pave the way for the release of all remaining hostages and for the reconstruction of Gaza.
With regard to Egypt's proposed plan for the day after the war, Paris, Copenhagen, London, Athens, and Ljubljana voice support for any deal that advances democracy for the Palestinians. This call comes despite the fact that democracy essentially granted the Islamist Hamas power under the so-called Palestinian Authority, when it secured a majority of 74 out of 132 seats in the Legislative Council in the last held elections by the Palestinian Central Elections Commission in 2006.
We welcome regional efforts to cohere around a single plan for the next phase in Gaza, and we stand ready to support and develop these ideas further. We are clear that any plan must have no role for Hamas, must ensure Israel's security, must not displace Palestinians from Gaza in accordance with Resolution 2735, and should support the unity of West Bank and Gaza under the Palestinian Authority's mandate. Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live side by side in peace and security. We reiterate our unwavering commitment to the vision of the two-state solution, where 2 democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders, consistent with international law and relevant UN resolutions.
It is important to note that back in 2006, when the Palestinian Authority last held elections, the figure who ran on a ticket promoting the internationally aspired two-state solutions, namely Salam Fayyad, secured only 2.41% of the vote, granting him only 2 seats in the Palestinian Authority's Legislative Council. Turning to Vienna, where the International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors periodic meeting concluded, after member states held a lengthy discussion on the agency's alarming reports on Iran's nuclear proliferation, which continues to enrich uranium far beyond civic application.
I was in Iran. I had important and constructive meetings there. Doubts continue, clarifications continue to be needed.
In a joint statement by the E3, including France, Britain, and Germany, the European powers stressed grave concern. They jointly asserted that the extent of Iran's enrichment activity is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons and have no credible civilian justification. Therefore, the E3 called upon Iran to halt and reverse its nuclear escalation and refrain from making threats regarding nuclear weapons, along with other de-escalatory measures. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, for his part, stressed the importance of engaging in diplomacy, beyond the seemingly ineffective efforts of his own agency.
As we know, the diplomatic activity around the situation in Iran is not limited to what we do. There are other important countries engaging with Iran, and we hope that this will lead us to a better place, to a better situation where all outstanding issues will be clarified and we will be making real, tangible progress, which is really needed.
In contrast to Western efforts to engage Iran, the Islamic Republic remains defiant, refusing to negotiate under the reinvigorated maximum pressure campaign, which is already frustrating Tehran's economy.
ما تحت فشار و تهدید مذاکره نخواهیم کرد. مذاکره یه امر ارادی است. کسی که نمیتونه کسی رو به زور پای میز مذاکره بشونه. مذاکره یک گفتگویی است که باید شکل بگیره بین افراد و بتونه اونها رو به یک هدفی در خروج برسونه. لذا امر اختیاری است، اجبار پذیر نیست و طبیعتاً تحت فشار حداکثری ما مذاکره نخواهیم کرد.
It is worth noting that while Iran and the United States are not negotiating directly, Moscow claims it is willing to assist in reaching a peaceful solution.
Иран – это наш союзник, и мы, вне зависимости от того, как и что происходит на других направлениях, мы будем развивать наши отношения с Ираном. И президент Путин считает и убежден, что проблема ядерного досье Ирана должна решаться исключительно мирными средствами. И есть возможность возвращения к основополагающему документу и так далее. И, конечно, Россия, будучи союзником Ирана, готова делать все возможное для того, чтобы способствовать этому мирному урегулированию проблем.
It is important to note that while Russia is keen on mediating between Washington and Tehran, prospects of a kinetic attack against Iran are rising by the day, with reports of a joint drill by the US and Israeli air forces, including B-52 strategic bombers, taking place earlier this week. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I am Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Tov. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.